Doctor, I'm a Time Lord. I'm from the planet Gallifrey in the constellation of Kasterborous.
I hope the ears are a bit less conspicuous this time.
You might be a doctor, but I am
I'm a doctor, but probably not the one you expect. Absolutely fantastic.
All of time and space, everything that ever happened or ever will. Where do you want to start?
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Bigger on the Inside, the NuWho Doctor Who watch-along. I am joined, as always, by Harry Murdoch. Hi, Harry.
Hey,
So today is a slightly different episode in the sense that it's going to be probably one of the longest ones that we're going to do for a while. We're going to be talking about the first two-parter of Doctor Who Series 1, which are called what, Harry?
Aliens of London and World War III.
Yes, so what did you think? This has been probably one of the first times I've properly sat down and watched these two episodes properly, because when you're a kid, you just put them on in the background and you just have them on. This is the first time I've actually sat down and properly watched these episodes. How did you find them?
I found, because I was a little wary going into these episodes, because obviously the general reception of these episodes, the main thing people remember is the Slitheen and all kind of the fart jokes and stuff like that. You know, lines such as "I'm shaking my booty" and "You mind not farting while I save the world."
I found that line to be hilarious because I've completely forgot he said it. I ended up replaying it about 4 times. The way Christopher Eccleston turns and just says, "Excuse me, do you mind not farting whilst I'm trying to save the world?" It was just so funny. I found that's one thing I noticed about these two episodes in particular, is that they were particularly funny compared to previous episodes.
And I mean, I'm not going to lie, I did kind of allow my inner 4-year-old to actually quite enjoy all these fart humor. Like, I know, fart jokes are a bit, silly, sometimes immature, but at the same time, a bunch of people like laying out these really loud rips and just giggling about it like kids. It's funny in that very just, instinctive way.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. One thing I did notice from the start of the episode is that the poster photo for Rose that she's gone missing doesn't actually look like Rose Tyler.
It looks like Billie Piper.
It looks like Billie Piper. Did you notice that?
Yeah, I noticed. I think, was her hair different in it?
It's a much darker colour, isn't it? It's also quite wavy. I imagine it was taken at a premiere or something like that.
Yeah. Although I did also notice that at the same time as them doing that, I noticed that the same photograph was actually hung up in Jackie's apartment. So
yes, I noticed that as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of that kind of weird in between where, well, no, it probably isn't a photo that was taken specifically for the show. They then went to the effort to try and make that photo a part of the world. So
yeah. One thing I also noticed on that poster is that the phone number on the poster has a digit missing, and if you phone it, it's not a real number.
Yeah. Is the same case for the alien helpline on the news?
Yeah, it is. I phoned that one as well.
So I was wondering if, like, back when the episode aired, like, if you phone those numbers, like, you get some kind of special message or something.
That's what I did think, because I know that certain films now, when they come out, if a van has a number on, the chances are if you phone that number, you'll get through to whatever the corporation is that's advertised on the side of the van. There was another mention of Bad Wolf. Did you notice that one? This one was a bit more obvious.
This is probably the most explicit reference to Bad Wolf, seeing as a kid spray paints it in white paint across the TARDIS.
Yeah. What did you think?
And I imagine for a lot of people...
Sorry, go on.
I imagine for a lot of people kind of viewing this for the first time without knowing Bad Wolf, I imagine that'll probably be the first time a lot of viewers will actually properly register that as a thing. Because it is just a bit of a weird phrase, Bad Wolf, out of context. Why would it?
I don't think outside of the show it actually means anything.
Other than, of course, grim fairy tales, the big bad wolf.
Yes.
With stuff like Little Red Riding Hood and the Three Little Pigs.
Yeah,
the phrase bad wolf is a bit of a... Yeah, so it's strange. It is one that causes a lot of intrigue, yeah.
What did you think I know when we first did this podcast, we talked about the CGI. How did you find it in this first episode? Because I found it with the spaceship crashing into Big Ben, then crashing. I found the scene of it flying through the skies of London and crashing into Big Ben really good. But the scene of it crashing actually into the Thames water, I didn't think worked as well.
Yeah, I mean, generally, it was a thing where, for me, the spaceship itself, if it was in motion, it was fine because you couldn't really, scrutinize it.
Yeah.
But when it was kind of at a standstill and it was, you could directly compare it to a tangible world, it was kind of obviously not real. Although the scene of Big Ben getting destroyed was
I think that's
surprisingly
practical.
convincing and held up well.
I think it's a practical
Was it
shot.
practical?
I think the bit.
Right.
I'm pretty sure when I've been to one of the Doctor Who museums when they used to be around before the experience. I'm pretty sure I saw the Big Ben prop. So I think that's a prop that they exploded and then added the alien spaceship in afterwards.
Right, I was wondering why it looked so good. That explains it.
Yeah. I also noticed that this is probably the first episode where it's a Rose and Doctor story, but it doesn't seem to be so much about Rose joining the team. She already, when they're stuck in traffic and they can't get to the spaceship crash site, the Doctor's like, oh, well, we can't get there, whatever. We're just, I'm an alien, this isn't really relevant to me. This is all up to humans to deal with. And she's like, no, we can do this, we can go this. And in the end, they go back to her flat and watch it on the news. She's the one who seems to be really pushing the idea of getting involved in another adventure.
Yeah. And I think it's probably good that kind of that change in Rose's character is introduced now, because obviously this is Rose's first time returning home after beginning to travel with the Doctor.
Yes.
And obviously she's been away much longer than she hopes for. Well, she was anticipating being away for, and it kind of does you start to see the juxtaposition of how traveling with the Doctor, even on a couple of adventures, has made it kind of harder and harder for her to connect with, her family, her friends, the world she used to be a part of. How traveling to these amazing places has made that stuff, even what was familiar, start to feel kind of alien to her.
Yeah, you touched on it there a little bit, the idea of Rose coming home. I really liked the way they included Jackie and Mickey and how Rose going away. Because when you're watching episode 2 and 3, you aren't really thinking of Jackie and Mickey at home. You know Mickey knows that Rose has gone, but you kind of forget about Jackie. You sort of think, oh yeah, she will be missing her daughter, even though it's been 12 minutes, supposedly. You start to think, well, she's actually been away quite a long time. So I like the idea that they do bring that back, because I don't think that had been explored properly before in Classic Who. Like, Sarah Jane disappears, and then she comes back 3 years later, and nobody really seems to have cared where she went.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, I feel like this is kind of a thing that's only really explored in NuWho, to my knowledge. And I feel that with Rose specifically, it's very interesting how it doesn't just explore what traveling with the Doctor is like, but how going away and traveling with the Doctor impacts the world you leave behind. Like I said, that with Rose, I think The End of the World, it did a very good job of making you empathize with Rose, feel like you're in her shoes and see everything through her eyes. But this is the first episode where you start to kind of feel that less so, and that I found a lot of points in this episode I was kind of empathizing more with the likes of Mickey and Jackie than I was with Rose. That this person who has been such a big part of their lives, and who they dearly love as any mum or boyfriend would, for this person to suddenly want to have less and less to do with them, especially being away for a year, and then being so eager to take off once again. You can imagine that would be really hard for,
Yeah, you sort of get that sort of selfish aspect of it, a sort of a side maybe we haven't considered with Rose, because you are a Doctor Who fan and you want the Doctor to travel with someone. But when you actually
Mm.
see the effect it has on the family of the companion, you start to think, are you just being selfish? Are you really thinking about other people? Obviously, that becomes slightly more clear in World War III with Mickey and his reluctance to actually travel in the TARDIS anyway. But we'll get to that when we get to that later on. But yeah, I think it was quite an interesting thing that hadn't really been explored, because I think there really is something that's been noticeable across the whole series. I think is a really good supporting cast of characters.
Absolutely, yeah.
And this is the first time we see Harriet Jones.
Harriet Jones, MP for Flydale North, is it?
Yes, she's this time, isn't she? Yeah. I think every time we see her, she
You
has
don't know who she is yet.
Yeah. No, I did make note of that. She has to introduce herself because people genuinely don't know who this woman is. I think she's a really good character in this.
Yeah, and it does a very good job of how when she's first introduced, you are always siding with the people who are turning her away. Of like, why are you trying to be involved? Why are you trying to like bring up this thing of hospitals? There's much more important things going on. But then, as the episode, this story goes on, she more and more begins to kind of prove herself as being someone who is very morally just, who is who takes initiative, who's very good at thinking things through. There's even a point where the Doctor says to her, "You're good at this."
Yeah, you almost feel like
Yeah.
she could have joined that team, but I feel like maybe she was too much of a liability to actually join the team. I feel she would get too excited.
I feel like Harriet Jones isn't a character who would want to travel with the Doctor because she cares more about, her country, her constituency, and kind of wants to stay in one place and look after that and make a change rather than, dot in and out like the Doctor likes to do.
Yeah. I really do. I do like that character. I'm going to go back to Mickey because I think these two episodes are almost really stolen by Noel Clarke's performance as Mickey. I think every time he's on scene, he's either doing something funny or just proving his worth.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because at the start of the episode, he runs straight into that wall. He sees the TARDIS, he pelts that wall so hard as he tries and grabs onto the side of the TARDIS before it takes off. But I know in future episodes, I'll try not to go into it too much. Why does the Doctor call Mickey Ricky?
I feel like it's either a mix of him genuinely not caring enough to remember his name and a mixture of him just really wanting to wind Mickey up.
Yeah.
But I feel like the way the Doctor treats Mickey actually starts to show some of the darker shades of his character and his dismissal of, a lot of humans as stupid apes.
Yeah,
like,
you do
Mickey
get that
is
impression.
very clear that, like the Doctor puts Mickey down a lot throughout this story. It isn't until the end where he throws him a bone and says that not all humans are stupid, indicating. But yeah, it's very clear as a viewer that Mickey isn't written as just some foil or a fool. Like, he says that while Rose has been away, he's researched the Doctor. He's found out stuff about him.
You
and
see
how
that
he's been involved.
when we go into Mickey's flat, you can see all the folders behind him labeled different things and drawings of TARDISes and DVDs stacked up high, just all this research that he's been doing for the last year. Obviously, because people thought he killed Rose. So I wonder if I imagine Big Finish have touched on that at some point, but if not, I think that'd be quite an interesting out of Doctor Who story to see
a story about the year Rose is away.
Yeah, I think that'd be quite interesting. Yeah, you could almost do 12 episodes, each episode being a different month, and how you can almost have it as like from almost like a diary. So it's like Jackie and Mickey writing a diary, and they're constantly contradicting each other throughout their individual, how their month's actually going.
Yeah. I have to also say, on the note of Rose being away for a year, I think considering this is an episode that has a lot to do with the Prime Minister and politicians, it was a very smart decision to have it that Rose was away for a year, because by doing that, they're able to kind of skirt around the fact that of having to acknowledge who's in power at that point.
Yeah.
There's a point where like the Doctor asks who's the Prime Minister, and Rose says, "How should I know? I've been away for a year." And it's a show where, obviously, I'm not going to say that Doctor Who isn't a political show, because Doctor Who is a very political show. It's sci-fi. Sci-fi very often touches upon political themes, but obviously it's never been a show to explicitly place itself as saying we support, Labour or Conservatives.
Yeah, it doesn't align itself with an opinion, does it? It just addresses an issue.
No. Well, obviously, each writer for the show has a political stance, but they don't. It could have been very easy if Russell wanted to take pot shots at, say, whatever party he doesn't like. But
because we do see
that this is a.
Sorry, go on.
Obviously, he recognizes that this is a show, for families, for children, and it's not really the right place and time to make such comments. So, he was very smart in finding a way to kind of have a story about political figures without it dissolving to that kind of thing.
Yeah, because we do see the Prime Minister very briefly, and I believe it's implied to be Tony Blair, who was the Prime Minister at the time, because the guy who falls out the cabinet, no pun intended, does look very much like Tony Blair, but not enough for you to go, that's clearly Tony Blair. You did touch on it there a little bit, that this is a kids show. This is the episode out of the 5 we've watched so far. This is the episode where I felt it was targeting itself at a younger audience more than a young adult audience.
Yeah.
Did you find that?
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think there are things where, as an adult viewer, you can get something out of it. Obviously, the Slitheen as a whole, they're not a monster, these big green things waddling about. I think it'd be hard-pressed to find any adult who would find that particularly creepy. And obviously the fact that their weakness is something as simple as vinegar.
Yes.
The farting. Yeah.
One thing that... Sorry, go on.
Would be hard-pressed to find an adult who would be creeped out by the Slitheen in the same way they would be creeped out by something like an Auton or a Cyberman or a Weeping Angel.
Yeah. No, I do agree with you. Obviously, the Slitheen weren't really the only alien in it. There was the space pig at the start of episode 4 that was actually in the spaceship. I felt so bad for that pig when it gets shot.
Yeah. What did they say it was? Did they say it was a pig who, through alien technology, had been made, like, its brain capacity had been increased or something?
Because they did a scan of it, didn't they? And they said its skull was definitely pig. I think it was a pig from Earth that the Slitheen had taken and changed up, and
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think that scene of it being shot, and then the Doctor's reaction to the fact that a human has decided to kill this creature. Yeah, I think that scene really shows how the Doctor 1 minute can really appreciate humans and want them to succeed and really push for them to be able to do more. But then as soon as they get scared and retaliate, the anger that's shown through him is very contrasting.
So, I mean, I think, is this the first time in NuWho that is kind of, we've shown the Doctor's distaste for violence, specifically gun violence? Because I know kind of in the classic series at more than one point, it's been made very explicit that the Doctor is not a fan of guns, armed weaponry.
Yes. No, I couldn't say for sure, but I'm pretty sure it is. He's got Batman's rules, which is he never uses a gun. One thing I did notice is how quick are Blue Peter with their crafts. I mean, the news was still breaking. It was breaking news. They were flicking through the channels, and there's Matt Baker from Blue Peter. For those not listening in the UK, Blue Peter is a children's television program where they do stuff every week. And one of the presenters is making a cake that represents the spaceship that has crashed in the London Thames probably 45 minutes ago.
I mean, that actually does lead into something I want to discuss, which I think is one of the kind of strengths of this episode, which is often, I feel, not recognised, which is a talent that Russell T Davies has displayed in a lot of work, like such as Years and Years and The Second Coming, which is this real knack to kind of capture how a public as a whole could respond to a larger-than-life event.
Yeah.
And here I feel like in the first episode, Aliens of London, of this story, he does a really good job at kind of displaying a quite believable way that a British public would react and respond to an alien spaceship crashing in the middle of London. You get all of these hurried news reports, different interpretations. You get people gathering together in apartments to kind of just discuss it.
I like the sign that just says LOET.
Oh, yeah.
But no, I did like that because I'm watching it and you can't help but think, what if this actually happened? How would you react? Like, I love sci-fi and I love stuff like this. And the idea of aliens existing, I love that. I think it'd be so cool. The repercussions of that, I don't even want to think about. So if an alien did land in the Thames, in one side of me would be like, this is amazing. Then the other side of me would be like, shit, this isn't going to be good. So I really think it does do a good job at depicting how people would actually react. Because I think this is one of the first times where it is global news that aliens do exist in Doctor Who universe.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. I know that within Russell T Davies's run, this is stays consistent. I'm not sure about after this, but Russell T Davies really commits to the idea of, now that the public have seen aliens, there's just kind of this heightened awareness that extraterrestrial life is out there and it's real, and it just becomes a part of their life. I mean, obviously it's not so much in this episode because you see at the end, there's newspaper stories being printed about the whole thing being a hoax.
Yeah.
Because as the Doctor says, the public aren't ready for it. It's something you kind of see more after the end of Series 2 of Battle of Canary Wharf, that people become more and more accepting of that kind of alien life is out there, and that sometimes it will come to visit.
No, it's very true. What did you think of the Doctor and Rose's relationship in this?
For the most part, it's the same as usual. They're written with great chemistry. The two actors bounce off each other really well. The one part that made me start to question how healthy their relationship is the bit at the end where the Rose is in Jackie's apartment. Jackie's going on about saying she's going to make them all shepherd's pie. And then the Doctor calls and kind of gives her this ultimatum of, you can stay home and have shepherd's pie, or you can come with me and continue adventuring. And it's kind of that, offering that kind of ultimatum is just to me, it seems like a very unreasonable and almost it doesn't sit quite right with me. And it kind of...
I found it creepy. It sounded like he was doing weird Time Lord Fern sex, is what I wrote down as a note. Because he's there going, we can ride the tide, everything is so... I'm like, what's this dude on about, man? Just calm down, go for shepherd's pie and go on an adventure.
Yeah.
I do have some...
there are kind of insinuations to that. There's the whole question of when the police comes to question Rose at the beginning of the story about if there's a sexual nature between Rose and Doctor's relationship, and they both deny it, but there's a kind of an awkwardness in their response as well.
I think that's something that's...
It's a very...
Sorry, go on.
Just as Rose and the Doctor become closer, kind of the potentially romantic implications of their relationship get brought into question, and it is a kind of odd one, especially when you take into consideration stuff like Rose is 19, the Doctor's 900.
Yeah. No,
and then Jackie asks it as well, is it right for the Doctor to be taking this person with him. There's their whole life against them. When he himself, like, he couldn't. She asked him, "Is it safe for? Is she safe traveling with you?" And he wasn't able to answer it because no, of course it's not
Yes.
safe.
Yeah.
Like, really, you can really side with the likes of Jackie and Mickey when it comes to their views of the Rose traveling with the Doctor, because there's a very strong case to be made for traveling with someone like that, with a relationship of that nature, going to the places that they go. There are a lot of uncomfortable questions and implications which arise.
Yeah. I think that's something that
Yeah.
definitely gets explored a lot, especially Jackie's view on the Doctor and Rose traveling with the Doctor, that do change slightly over the course of the 2 seasons that these characters are relevant in. I do have some notes here on what Chris and Billy had to say about the Doctor's relationship with Rose in this episode. Chris described it as a love story. He says it's love at first sight. So that's quite interesting to see that he believes that this incarnation of, obviously, the 10th Doctor we know fancies the pants off Rose Tyler, but with this version of the Doctor, it's maybe slightly more questionable. We don't really know. Whereas Billy went on to say, it's such an interesting dynamic. From reading the script, you just can't put your finger on what their relationship actually is about. So it's quite interesting to see how they both know that there is an element of a romantic interest in their friendship. Chris sees it as they clearly fancy each other, whereas Billy sees it as maybe they're just really good friends and there's a possibility of something.
Yeah.
So that's episode 4, which is called what again, Harry?
Episode 4 was Aliens of London.
Do you want to go into World War III, or do you have some notes on Aliens of London that we haven't touched on yet?
Well, I feel like we've been saying bits and pieces about World War III as we go, so I'm happy to go straight into that.
Okay,
detail.
one thing I will ask you about that we didn't really touch about is the Slitheen. How do you find them as an actual creature? How do you find them as an alien?
I feel like of the ones we've kind of seen so far, from just kind of a visual design concept perspective, of this series so far, they're probably one of the weaker ones.
Okay.
Just that, it's a big green bug-eyed monster.
Yeah, because they never return after this. They return in spin-offs in the Sarah Jane Adventures, but they never, to my knowledge, or what I can remember, properly return in the actual main show.
One of them appears later in this series, but
Yes.
you don't see the proper Slitheen monster again.
That's true.
And I do kind of, and it's interesting because, like, looking at it as an adult, they're not the most remarkable thing, but as a kid, I do remember the Slitheen, to me, was one of, like, the big monsters. Like,
Yeah, I remember
consider
that,
them up there with the stuff like Daleks and Cybermen, and maybe that's because of, like, me having more exposure to stuff like Sarah Jane Adventures, which I admittedly never, like, watched religiously. I just saw bits and pieces of it on TV, but they did kind of maintain a presence, especially through stuff like that show.
Oh, no, definitely. To say that they were quite a big monster, when Jackie is being attacked by one at the start of episode 5, Mickey seems pretty unfazed by the big Slitheen, up to the point where he just whacks it over the head with a chair and takes a photo on his phone.
That was a good moment.
Well, I liked it. I was like, oh, that's so good. But then later on in the episode, when Mickey sends Rose the picture of the Slitheen, is a different picture.
Yeah.
Did you notice that? Yeah, the one Mickey takes is really close up of the head. And then the one Rose receives is like almost like a torso upwards with its arms in the shot.
Oh, right.
Yeah. I really like the Slitheen. I think they look good. How did you find Sorry.
No, yeah, I find the costume itself, like, works. It's good. I think, like, the CG bits of them are a bit weird.
No, I agree, yeah. There's a scene where they run through a corridor, and I remember looking at it thinking, they just don't look the same. They're missing something.
I mean, I think, if I remember right, I heard it, like, behind the scenes, like, it was kind of a last-minute thing. The CGI for the Slitheen, or, like, getting a special effects shot was really difficult for them.
Yeah.
Is that right?
I
Yeah.
think so. Yeah, I only briefly watched a few moments of Confidential, but there are moments where the Slitheen costume looks really good, and then the actual CGI elements of it. I know they blink quite a lot,
Yeah.
and I think the blink is CG. And then there's a scene where the three of them are in the meeting room at Downing Street, and they're talking. And on the shot of the wide shot, none of their mouths are moving. And then when it cuts into close-ups of each individual Slitheen, they've CGI'd the mouth. So maybe it was quite late in the game.
Yeah. And I feel like that was moments like that when the Slitheen were a mixture of the practical costume with CGI enhancements. To me, that was when they looked the best.
Yeah.
But that's kind of my stance with most special effects. For me, most special effects work the best when they mix in practical with computer enhancements.
Definitely. I like seeing them talk to each other. I think that's quite funny, especially the scene where especially the shot where the Doctor's threatening to blow the whole Houses of Parliament up. I think that scene of Harriet, Rose, and the Doctor's quite funny. How their dynamic works quite well, and I think that scene really plays to Chris's comedy strengths as well. Something that we maybe don't get to see a lot of, and I know something that he wasn't that fond of as well.
Was he not?
I've seen in interviews him say that he wishes his zaniness was turned down a lot and he played it as a more serious role.
It's interesting to hear that because for me watching, he seems very natural in the bits where he does like spring into action or have a big goofy grin on his face.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Yeah, I think that's one of my favourite moments. The scene where he offers Harriet the drink, and she goes, "Give it to Rose," and then he closes the thing, and she goes, "Well, how are we going to get out?" And he just goes, "Oh." Even that, yeah, I can maybe understand his point slightly, but I do think it's just an aspect of his character. I think it does work well.
I know he's not the first Doctor to kind of desire a more of an opportunity to go darker. I know that Colin Baker wished that his Doctor had been handled better, though I think that was primarily to do with the costume, but he did not.
Yeah, I think I remember seeing an interview with Colin where he said that the costume he had requested was the one that Eccleston ended up wearing.
Yeah.
So, but then again, that Sixth Doctor costume is something else.
Yeah. I mean, I'm used to it at this point. Like, I'm not opposed to the costume. I feel like the blue variant that you see in Big Finish is better.
Yeah, man, I think a lot of people feel that. I really enjoyed the scene of Andrew Marr, the BBC political editor, standing outside of Downing Street as all these different fat people just turn up. I think that's really funny.
Am I right in thinking that it looked like they actually used proper news cameras for shooting those bits, as opposed to TV cameras?
I know it's not Downing Street that they shot at, because you can tell when they do the long shots. But I imagine it is, maybe they got a film crew in to actually film those sequences, because it does look really good.
Yeah, because like watching it, like that footage is probably some of the footage that's aged the best, because watching a lot of it, it did look like kind of just a regular BBC news broadcast, and that kind of really helps just kind of bring the whole world building kind of together.
Yeah. How did you feel about this being the first story of the current era to be set solely in Earth in the present day?
I think it's a strong one. I think it kind of plays into what most people would think of first when it comes to a modern day story about aliens, which is a very kind of traditional alien invasion story, of course, handled with that British Russell T Davies Doctor Who twist.
Yes. No, I know a lot of people have issues with Doctor Who, especially these first Russell T Davies era, of a lot of the stories being set on Earth. But I don't really I don't have a problem with it. I find there's sometimes some of the strongest episodes.
I know that my brother, when he watched the show with me, he always said that his favourite episodes were the ones set in present day.
Yeah, I watched an interview with Russell where he said it's all very well and good taking characters like Rose and Mickey and the Doctor to the edge of the universe, but me and you and the people listening to this can't really relate to that. We've never been to the end, so you have to bring it back to Earth, to the modern times, so that we can reconnect with these characters and their emotions more than we can when they're in these far-flung, beautiful places.
Absolutely. And I think the way that the modern day episodes are treated within the span of a series work well. Kind of it's structured very well that you start modern day, you check in on modern day in the middle, and then kind of you go back to modern day a bit at the end. I feel like that kind of helps to kind of frame all the crazy adventures and kind of offers that nice juxtaposition, both of how incredible those stories in the future and past are, as well as how much going on those adventures changes a character like Rose.
Yeah, especially at the end of the episode, the very last shot is the TARDIS takes off. Rose says she'll be back in 10 seconds. Jackie counts 10 seconds on her watch. She throws her arms up in the air like, I don't even know what to do. She walks back to the flat and Mickey just sits on the bin and waits.
Yeah.
So it's
for me, that bit at the end was probably one of the most kind of affecting parts of this series so far, because it was just such a kind of human, grounded moment. It wasn't a big emotional thing where Jackie like breaks down or anything because she's not back or anything. Like, it's a very kind of somber moment. Where
there was moments in this episode that, especially with Jackie, where I found myself really feeling for her, and you start to, and now and again you get the pinnacle moments in Doctor Who where you do feel emotional. But this was a really surprising one where it just caught me, and I suddenly just felt, I was like, oh man, I feel real bad for Jackie and Mickey, who were, Rosie's boyfriend and mother. She's an only child. She's only got one parent, and her boyfriend cares about her so much that he's been researching where she's gone for the last year. And she just gets in this box with the Doctor and flies off. And you start, like I mentioned earlier, you start to sort of think, is it quite selfish of her to do this?
Absolutely. And I think that really surprises me in the sense that I remember, like, as a kid, you'd always kind of roll your eyes at, like, the Jackie bits. You're like, Jackie, she's so annoying. I just want to see, Rose go on her adventure with a doctor. But then, watching as an adult, you kind of think, this is her daughter, and she has no idea where she's going, what she's doing. She has no way of making contact with her. Rose can phone her at any point, but Rose doesn't think to.
Yes, it is strange. And when she does phone... Oh, hang on 1 second then. Okay, so Rose has been gone for 12 months. Yeah? Jackie says, you didn't even phone me once to check in. Episode 2 of season 1, she phones her mum when she's looking at the world from space. The Doctor zaps her phone.
Yeah. I think that though when Rose phoned her mum there, it had only been about 12 hours or so since the end of the first episode. So I guess Jackie wouldn't have realised that Rose had been gone at that point. And when Rose phoned Jackie, she didn't give any kind of indication that she was anywhere out of the ordinary.
Yes.
So I guess from Jackie's perspective, it would have been a thing that Rose went out last night, she rang me the next day, and then I didn't hear from her since.
Yeah, I think you're right there, because I think Jackie does say, why are you phoning me in the middle of the day? What have I done wrong? So yeah, you're probably right. It's probably a day at the most that she's actually been missing. All in all, I found these 2 episodes really enjoyable.
I had a lot of fun with them, yeah.
I did. I think out of the 3 episodes we've watched prior to this, Rose, The End of the World, and Unquiet Dead, this has been the most fun episode, I think. It's the most Doctor Who episode of Doctor Who so far.
Yeah.
How did you find it, all in all?
Yeah, no, I had a lot of fun with it as well. I think of this series so far, my favourite episode has been The Unquiet Dead. But I think this story is definitely second or third. Only to... It's kind of, for me, this is on the same level with Rose. Maybe Rose I prefer slightly more, just because Rose had a lot to do in setup.
Yes.
And did it so well. but no, this is still a strong episode, and I imagine if you were watching this week by week back in 2005, you'd still be having a great time. You'd still want to be tuning in every episode.
Yeah, I don't think these characters have got. They haven't. Sorry, go on.
Like, I can see kind of watching back, because every time I watch these episodes, I kind of try to play myself back in 2005, and this show has been like for 15 years coming back, and like being a new person to the show. And me as a viewer, I'd keep tuning in each week. Like, I'm having enough fun with each of these episodes to want to see what happens next, and especially with kind of these kind of emotional ties that are starting to be introduced with stuff like Jackie and Mickey and Rose in a relationship with the Doctor. There's a lot where it's still up in the air of how is this going to pan out.
Yeah, and I think each episode they seem to bring in a deeper, a new layer of each character. The Doctor, we find out more of his emotions, or we see more of his emotions, I should say. Episode 1, he's very mysterious.
Very alien.
Episode 2 he's very excited. Episode 3 is quite dark. Episode 4 and 5, he's in his element. He's loving it. And the same can be seen with Rose, who's episode 1, she's very outgoing and she wants to join the TARDIS. And then in this episode 3, as we said, when she leaves the TARDIS and walks on the snow for the first time, she's very apprehensive about doing so. Episode 4 and 5, she's loving it, and she has the option to quit now or carry on, and she carries on.
And it is a thing where kind of it's very well done in the fact that although you can take sides with these characters, you can see where each of them is coming from. You understand why Rose can't just go back to her normal life, but you can understand why Jackie is so, pained to see her daughter go off again. You can understand why Mickey is so resistant to go adventuring.
Yeah.
Because of how perilous it is.
Yeah, he's sort of like, I feel, when you're a kid, you're watching this and you're thinking, like you said, you're like, oh, Jackie, here she comes again, put a downer on everything. And then being 21, I watch it and I maybe side with Mickey, where I'm like, I can see why this must be so exciting. But my common sense tells me, do not get in that box. But then, obviously, I imagine as you get older and you watch it, you start to maybe side with Jackie and understand her aspects well. Maybe that's why the show worked so well when it came back, is because you have these 3 different age layers of characters who can relate to the show altogether. Whereas if you
I think that's a question. Do you think if, like, the Doctor appeared in his TARDIS and went on an adventure, like, near you, and was like, hey, want to come with me? Would you?
Do I know the show?
Let's say no. Just that this strange man with a box, or woman with a box and a screwdriver comes and fights some aliens and asks if you want to come traveling with him.
If I was in a scenario where I'd seen the alien and I'd been saved, I'm picturing myself as Rose in episode 1 in that scenario where I get the option to leave or to stay with Mickey or go. I think I would be apprehensive, but I would go. Maybe, but I feel I would be, knowing me, I would do the one trip and I'd be like, okay, that's enough. I can't do this. It's too weird.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I feel like after one near-death experience, I'd be like, I'm done. I want to go home.
Yeah, I nearly just got fried.
It's an interesting thing that you don't really see many companions do that. Like, companions are either in it for the long haul until, like, either they're forced to separate or they die.
Yeah, it'd be quite interesting to see a companion who maybe joins the TARDIS team by accident. Maybe he or she is saved by the Doctor, and the Doctor just can't get her home for whatever reason, so she's stuck with the Doctor.
Yeah, the closest thing I can think to a companion like actively leaving is Martha at the end of series 3, where she just says, this was great, but I'm done. I'm going to go live my life.
I agree,
But obviously we can get to that. We can get to Martha when we get to Martha.
In 2 seasons'
which
time.
Which is not going to be there then. Yeah.
Yeah, so we are episode 5 of 12, which means next week, episode 6, we will be halfway through this first series 1.
Yeah.
So I thought next week we could rank the 6 episodes so far.
Yep.
And see where we fall in that. We've got some news next week about the remaining 6 and what we're going to do with those shows and stuff that's happening between. But we'll talk about all that next week. Any final thoughts that we haven't talked about yet, Harold?
I don't think so. Well done, Russell. Done a bang-up job bringing this show back.
So next week is Dalek, and tune in for that.
Yeah.
What we can say now is with absolute certainty is that the show is now on iTunes. I don't know why I say that, because people listening to this, if they're listening to this on iTunes, already know it's on iTunes. So it's on iTunes, it's on Acast, it's also on YouTube. We have a Twitter account.
Acast?
Acast is the site that hosts the podcast.
Is that connected to iTunes, or
you upload to Acast? You upload to Acast and they distribute to iTunes.
Right. Okay. Tim's the one who does like behind the scenes editing, admin stuff. I just hop on each week and talk.
Yeah. So we've got Acast, we've got iTunes, we've got YouTube. We've also got a Twitter account now, at Bigger on the Pod, I believe it's called. I'll try and link it below. There's also an email address for whatever reason. If you want to send us something, I kind of had to make the email address to set up some of the accounts. So feel free to
send in fan art of me and Tim. Like, you can't actually see us, but what we look like based on our voices.
Yes, that'd be interesting. I mean, it's not the hardest thing to work out what we look like. You just go on Twitter and put our names in. I imagine we come up.
I mean, yeah, I'm pretty sure I've already commented on like at least one post. And you tag me in a lot of them, so it wouldn't be that hard to track us down.
That's true. But maybe if you have an episode of Classic Who you would like us to talk about, that would be quite interesting. I actually went out today, Harry, and I bought an episode of Classic Who. Maybe with I'm just getting it now. Maybe with the intention that we could perhaps do an episode on it. I think I'll watch it and then I'll decide if we're going to do an episode on it. But is Doctor Who, The Ark in Space, starring Tom Baker?
Is that his second story, The Ark in Space?
I couldn't tell you. Many thousands of years ago, in the future, Earth becomes uninhabitable. Around space, aboard space station Nerva, the remaining survivors of the human race drift among the stars in suspended animation. The Doctor, Sarah, and Harry arrive to find vital systems have been sabotaged.
I can't believe I get into trouble with the Fourth Doctor and Sarah Jane Smith. This is so cool.
As mankind begins to awake from its enforced deep sleep, the Doctor discovers that they are not alone. Yeah, so that'll be interesting. I also have the Lost episode Reanimated Sharda. I own that. I own the first few episodes of William Hartnell, so that would be interesting to go over. One of my personal favourites is the Patrick Troughton episode Tomb of the Cybermen. That's a very good episode. With some great music. I know a lot of people who are big fans of Troughton. Yeah, so that's interesting. And I own a Fifth Doctor episode. I can't remember exactly what it's called. And of course, the TV movie. Yeah. I know it's I want to say 56th or 57th anniversary this year.
Well, if the 60th is the 23rd, that sounds right, yeah.
Yeah.
Because the 23rd, that's the 60th.
Yeah, so I thought we could perhaps do a previous anniversary. We can maybe do the 3 Doctors, the 5 Doctors, or the 2 Doctors. We can do one of those, depending on which one.
I'd be up for the 3 Doctors.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. I owned the 5 Doctors, but we can do the 3 Doctors. That'd be quite interesting as well.
Work through them sequentially, yeah.
Yeah, cool. So tune in for all this amazing, fun stuff. And more news next week on future episodes because we've got some cool news. Right, I will see you all later. Say bye, Harry.
Bye-bye.
Geronimo!